This is what I'm talking about, and this is why I haven't done a lot of Star Wars videos on this channel. In this particular video, I have not seen The Rise of Skywalker, but I'm going to give my final thoughts before I actually see this film, if I actually see this film, and I'm going to talk about that right now. Hello, my name is Kyle, and welcome to my channel where we take culture, TV, and movies and we filter it right. If this is your first time here, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so that you don't miss any future content. Now, as I said in my introduction, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker was something that has prevented me from wanting to do any Star Wars content on this channel because the situation with the movie goes way back to The Last Jedi, and some would argue that it goes back to the sequel trilogy beginning with The Force Awakens. Now, I have a video that I go through, I talk about this. I'll leave it above if you want to check that out, but a little bit of backstory about myself and why I even care about this so strongly is this. I'm going to talk about my history. I'm going to talk about why the political narrative of why social justice warrior, virtual signaling, and identity politics has come into play in not only Star Wars, but also many, many films and movies and TV shows up to this point. And in my opinion, Star Wars is just a casualty in what we're seeing as a trend, hopefully a dying trend right now in Hollywood. And lastly, I'll talk about, what I know about the film. I did a spoiler critique of the rumors that had been out and the leaks that have come out. And I'll leave a link to that as well. Now, that particular video, which was done by Star Wars Coffee, the YouTube channel, has changed slightly, but most of those rumors or leaks are true and have been confirmed based on the Hollywood premiere that happened last night. The ending is different because some things have changed, and there's been multiple endings based on the reports that I have seen on YouTube and also on the internet. It also has been confirmed by a European company as well. I think it was in Sweden or Switzerland. They also confirmed the marketing of what happened in the film has been spoiled as well. So, and based on what we're seeing now with the reviews, which are out now from Rotten Tomatoes, as you can see right now, it sits at a 56% Rotten Tomatoes score, which I believe is probably the lowest score we've seen so far for a Star Wars film this early. I could be wrong about that. The Phantom Menace could have had a lower score, but I don't think it did. In fact, I'm not even sure Rotten Tomatoes was even around then. So, but this is really, really bad. And I'm going to tell you about why I think that is and what the backlash is and why this could be probably the worst Star Wars we've seen in both box office and in critical score. And essentially what's happening, I'll get into that later, but why the two factions have come together to basically take this movie apart, and both sides hate it from both sides. So really quickly about myself, the history of myself and why Star Wars is important to me. I have seen every single Star Wars film in the theater on its first run, including the 1977 A New Hope Episode 4. I was a young kid, but I do remember that, and I remember growing up in the Star Wars culture around the world. It was something that I can't really explain to people today because the world is so much different with information. Obviously there was no internet, so there was no social media and such. So it was just your 7 or 8 channels that you had. There was the news, and there was the stores where you go into, and you'd see the merchandise and you'd see the commercials, and Star Wars was simply everywhere. And it was, for many people, it was a religion. And I can see that because you had the Jedi aspect of it, the Force, and so forth. And so for many people, it was just the fact that you could see big screen action with great sound, great characters, and it was there. And also it's because it was such an optimistic film. in terms of Hollywood, because up to that point there had been so many gray type heroes, your Popeye Doyles, your Huds, these movies that were basically taking the good guys and making them the bad guys, sort of whatever, and the bleakness of the 70s and very much the 60s as well was coming to a head. And so this was something that really, really took Hollywood by surprise, and Star Wars was a phenomenon. We know all about that. And so, for to see a franchise that has been taken by its founder, George Lucas, who I hear was not invited to the premiere last night. He definitely wasn't there. So I'm not sure if he was invited or didn't want to show or whatever. But that's a long story in of itself with George Lucas. But to see his creation be taken apart, and it's been very, very hard to really take, okay? Now, we know that he sold Star Wars for $4 billion, so we shouldn't feel sorry for the guy. But to a point I do, because based on Bob Iger's book, and I'll paraphrase what's happened here, essentially he said that when George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney for around $4 billion, and there's some stock options in there as well, that George Lucas had treatments or summaries of 3 sequel films that he sold as part of that deal. And he was under the impression that that was a handshake deal, that they were going to make those films. Those films were not made. And Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, said, well, George knew that we were not obligated to make these films, but when The Force Awakens was presented to him, he was upset because he realized at that point that they were not making the Star Wars films that he had envisioned, and he was upset by it. And Bob Iger said, you know what, I regret that I didn't handle this better. And so from that point on, they went into a different direction. Kathleen Kennedy, being the person that George Lucas handpicked to replace himself to be the head of Lucasfilm, basically went in a different direction. So they got J.J. Abrams for the first one of the sequel trilogy, and then they got Rian Johnson, which is where the controversy really, really kicked in, to do the second one, which was The Last Jedi. And The Last Jedi was a film that Star Wars fans hated. Personally, I saw it. I thought it was pretty good up until the point until Luke Skywalker was killed. Okay, I wanted to say that for a little spoiler here. So that's a spoiler warning, but I'm not even going to put a flash up there on the screen. It's whatever. So, that being the case, and once that happened, I was like, you know what? They just killed off Luke, and I don't know how I feel about that. So they took the entire movie that I thought was decent to a point where I thought was horrible, and the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to see the film. I saw each film at least 5 times in the theater. I saw, well, not the first one. I didn't see that, and the second one. I didn't see the first 3 because I was a high schooler. I didn't have the means to see them, but I saw them multiple times on videotape. But after that, when I had the means to do so, I saw all of the last 5 in this case. I saw those multiple times in the theater, and I saw the Force Awakens 8 times in the theater. And so when The Last Jedi came out, I saw it twice, and I was like, I'm done. Because there was nothing for me to see, because I knew what was happening, and there was no need to kill off Luke Skywalker. And then the more I thought about it, the more, the subversion of expectation that Rian Johnson did, the more it made me upset, and it made a lot of fans upset. Which is why we saw the backlash with the follow-up movie to that, which was Solo, a Star Wars story, lost money. The first Star Wars film to lose money. Now, because this is a trequel, this is a trequel. This is a sequel trilogy movie. I don't believe it's going to lose money unless there's so much money in overhead with the marketing, because they're really pushing this thing out to say it's going to lose money. But I do not think, and I've said this for the past 2 years, that I do not think that this film will make as much money as The Last Jedi. I had said on social media and openly that I feel that the Rise of Skywalker Episode 9 would be the first film of the 3 trequels or prequels, whatever you want to call them. The 3 sets of films, the prequels, the original, and the sequels. It'd be the first set of those 3 to make less money than the second film of that particular trilogy. Okay, and I stand by that. I don't think this movie is going to do well at all, especially when we're looking at the Rotten Score tomato right now as we sit in the early morning of December 18th at 56%. So this is where we are. And so I want to kind of wrap this video up by saying why I think this is causing such a backlash. And it's simply this, is that you have 3 factions of fans, okay? And only one of those factions of fans are actually going to appreciate this film. So we're only going to talk about a third of the viewing audience is going to appreciate this film and possibly even like it. And even they may not like it as much. And the 3 factions are this: the people who liked The Last Jedi, the people who didn't like The Last Jedi, and then the average going popcorn fan who wants to see a movie regardless of what the political narratives or what's going on, because they don't pay attention to this stuff. You know, they go to work, they want to be home with their families, and oh, by the way, let's go check out a movie. Oh, Star Wars is playing, let's go check that out. So those people may actually like the film, and that's what's going to happen. But the Star Wars base, the core audience of the fans, those are the people who do not like The Last Jedi, all right? And this is the core audience. This is basically myself included. We're not going to go see it, all right? Or at least we're not going to go see it multiple times. We'll see it one time to review it, to critique it and whatever. And I will see this movie eventually. It's a Star Wars film. It's part of the canon. I will see it because I just have to see it. It may be, on the, when I see it, when it comes on, Netflix or Disney Plus. I guess it'll be on Disney Plus now. I'll check it out then. Or I may go see it. Chances are I'll probably go see it in the dollar theater when it does come out. So I probably will see it in that capacity, just to say that I saw all 9 films in the theater. So I'll probably go see it in the dollar movie theater. So yes, we have these people like myself. And then we have the other group of people. We have the people who liked The Last Jedi. And these are going to be your blue check mark people on social media. These are going to be your blue check mark people on Twitter, on Instagram, on all these, what people would call the access media or the shill media, the people shilling for Disney or the corporations so that they can, number one, be invited to the premiere parties and access and so forth, or they're part of the people who were defending The Last Jedi because they were calling people man babies for not liking it. The people who didn't like The Last Jedi, many of them were called, racist, homophobics, and so forth. Homophobics? No, not homophobics. They were called people who hated the fact that a woman was the the lead, and they were saying that these man babies and that this toxic Star Wars culture, and you had Rian Johnson attacking the fans. You had Rian Johnson himself actually retweeting stuff and trolling the fans. People like John Boyega, even J.J. Abrams, and Star Wars itself, Disney, Lucasfilm, didn't pull back on some of their punches either. And we add that in with the Captain Marvel deal. I'll leave a link to that as well. I did a thing about that. This whole culture of woke and narrative and inclusion and diversity, and how Star Wars was never diverse, even though it was, and how in all of this, those people were making that stance and had to continue on that stance, and therefore when the Last Jedi wasn't doing well, it started off really well in the box office initially, but tapered off and only grossed around $1.3 billion. I say only 1.3, that's a lot of money, but for Star Wars, that's, I mean, the Force Awakens grossed $2 billion, and this was expected to gross anywhere from less of that to 1.7 to 1.5 at the at the worst, but it goes even less than that. And the backlash was really, really bad, and people were just understanding what we call the fandom menace is, which is basically the uprising of fans who love the original trilogy, who love the Clone Wars, who love the canon material that came out prior to this movie, were just trying to express themselves, and that's all it was. But yet they were attacked for that. Oh, you can't like The Last Jedi because you are a toxic white male, you hate women, and all of this. And people are like, what are you doing? And you wonder why channels like Geeks and Gamers and people like Midnight's Edge and Doomcock and all these different channels popped up and became really, really, really popular really, really, really quickly. It's because of that. And so this is going to be the final backlash on that. And that particular audience is not going to go see it. And the group that does like The Last Jedi, those people are not going to like it because of this one reason. Because of all the backlash, J.J. Abrams and Disney and Lucasfilm and Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy, I'm not sure if she was involved so much in this, started to retcon or reverse the decisions of Rian Johnson's film, The Last Jedi. And so they started undoing stuff. And this is from what I'm hearing in social media and on YouTube and on Twitter. I haven't seen the film yet, but for what I understand happened is, in the film, they're basically undoing a lot of the stuff in The Last Jedi, which is making these people on the side that like them, who like who the show media, who defended The Last Jedi, who attacked the fans, they're saying, okay, if you are backing up and reversing decisions based on that, then what I took as a position prior is wrong, and now I'm the one that's having to backtrack, and they don't like that. So they're going to attack it from that angle because they can no longer defend The Last Jedi because it's obviously been repudiated by the fans. That's why we see some people saying, oh, the fans won, they got their way, and now we don't like The Last Jedi because they don't like it. So they're upset because of their film that they claim to like or defend, which I don't think they like. They're just trying to defend it and trying to save face. However, these people are upset because now they're on defensive. And then, of course, the people who hated The Last Jedi, well, they're happy. Well, not happy, but they're basically letting their voices be heard by not showing up at the theaters. Now, this doesn't affect the Rotten Tomatoes score per se, but I think all in all, that's why this film is not going to do very well. So that only leaves the last group of people, the people who basically don't care about any of this stuff. They hear Star Wars, they go to the theater. And that's what's going to happen on opening day. It's going to open big, probably around $120, $130 million, I would think. We'll see what happens. $130 million, I would think, maybe, if it gets that high. And I suspect it'll taper off from there because neither of the other three factions are going to go and repeat viewing. The fans that want to go see it probably aren't going to go see it again because that's not what they do. The people who see the film are the ones who are the fans who go multiple times, and that's not going to happen. So I think this movie will come in at around $1 billion, slightly above. I don't think it's going to get to $1.3 billion to pass The Last Jedi, not even close. Because for that to happen, it would have to have raving reviews. And right now, it sits at 56%. That would have to change to at least 80%, I think, by today. It's not going to happen. So people are not going to want to go see this. There's other options. I mean, I think Cats opens today. I'm not sure if people are going to see that. But Jumanji's opening up. I'm not sure if that opens up next weekend. People may hold their money for that. So that's my take on this. I have not seen the film. But this unscripted blog I'm doing now is something I thought I'd do before, the hype gets in so that I can be on record to say this prior to anything happening actually before the kickoff tonight. And so with that, if you like the content on this channel where I take culture, TV, movies, and I filter it right, please hit that like and subscribe button and that bell icon so you don't miss any future content. And as always, please check out some content that I have right